Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar. Run for the latest weather warnings as we have numerous yellow warnings issued for rain and wind through Sunday, as we are going to see some fairly stormy conditions taking over. Now, it isn't going to be anything too serious. This system has not been named. Its centre will remain quite far away from the UK. We are still going to see some very strong west to southwesterly winds as we do interact with this system's weather fronts and with its southern edge. We'll be able to have a look at that in detail on the latest UKV, looking at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. It is going to remain unsettled throughout the next 5 days and probably turn a little bit chillier into early next week, with the temperatures dropping below average once again, as we are likely to see some polar maritime air masses moving in. Not expecting anything majorly wintry, but perhaps temperatures back down to the mid-single digits, whereas the last few days has been very mild. Temperatures well into the double digits today, 13, 14 degrees, but as I said, cooling down into next week. And then we'll have a look at the longer range, which does continue this west to northwesterly wind for much of the next week to 10 days. But there are some tentative signs, as we saw yesterday, around the day 10 period, of perhaps some higher pressure interacting with us once again. At the moment, there's no major confidence in it, but we're seeing it a bit from the GFS today and the GEM in slightly different ways, perhaps developing into more of just a standard high pressure system over the top of us, perhaps moving slightly further northwards, maybe encouraging some late season easterlies or northeasterlies. At the moment, as I said, nothing too severe, but it is something to keep a close eye on, as it could develop pretty quickly into early March. March and April are quite notorious for late season colder easterlies or northerly blasts, as we do see the demise of the polar vortex does allow blocking patterns to more readily dominate. So it definitely would be in tune with what we'd expect into early spring, these sort of brief but perhaps quite severe colder spells. So we'll have to keep a very close eye on that. So do remember, if you enjoy the videos, which do like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see that it's actually pretty dry through this afternoon. I'm recording this around 5 PM, so we're just about getting towards sunset now, and it's been a very pleasant day. Very much felt like early spring out there. Been able to go out today, and it's actually felt not too bad. Not feeling particularly cold at all, as the temperatures around the 13, 14 degree mark, not too far away from feeling properly spring-like, or even a little bit of early summer, getting towards those sort of mid to high teens, that we start to feel the real warmth in the sunshine. But a little bit cooler than that. As I said, we'll be cooling down much further than that over the next few days. It wasn't like that though this morning. We did have a lot of heavy rain, and the remnants of that rain are spreading now into northern Europe, into Scandinavia, and very wet start. But the rest of today, as that cloud had cleared, much more pleasant. A few showers across Scotland, again a few hefty in places, and those winds continue to come in from the west. Do look at the temperatures, look at that, loads of yellow, indicating temperatures into the double digits, or at least high single digits further northwards. As I said, around the 13, 14 degree mark, maybe even a 15 degree out there somewhere as our top temperature today. You can see where all the cold air that we had earlier this week into last weekend, where we saw temperatures still in the low to mid single digits, all of that cold air that we did flirt with. We never got the really cold air that stayed across Central Europe, but we did flirt with that, and you can see it is pushed further eastwards now back towards Eastern Europe, and for much of Northern and Western Europe we're into this big milder sector with the big cold block well to our east. Now, if you look at the latest weather warnings, as I said, we've got numerous warnings as we head through Sunday, as we are going to see some fairly stormy conditions. And if you do start having a look at this large wind warning from 6 AM until 6 PM, mainly for the west here and for many northern areas, 50 to 60, maybe as high as 70. Again, we won't go into these in too much detail, as they are quite broad warnings, but do check these specific ones out if you are interested for you. Again, medium likelihood, low impact, so not expecting anything too major. Same warning issue for Northern Ireland, again similar sort of stats, 50 to 60 up to 70 perhaps, slightly different timings, 3 hours earlier, that's why it's separate. And then 4 smaller rain warnings, and you can see here from 7 AM until 3 PM here across southwest of Scotland, across the Lake District from 10 AM until 7 PM. Again, we're looking at a few tens of millimetres, and on top of the heavier rain we've seen the last few days, it could cause some issues. For South Wales, midday until midnight, and southwest England from midday until midnight. midnight as well. So the normal prone areas where we see relief rainfall because of the hills and mountains, South Wales, South West England, North West England, Lake District and South West England. I am liking this new outline for these mornings. That is quite a nice feature. Hopefully that will allow us to look at these mornings a little bit better, because sometimes we get events like this where there are loads of different warnings on top of each other. It can get a bit confusing, but yeah, I do like this new feature. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when we do see another major event where we do have lots of different warnings. Hopefully it'll mean it's a lot easier to distinguish between those. But yeah, nice update there from the Met Office. But as I said, expecting some disruption tomorrow. Nothing major, but a classic winter storm moving through, mainly affecting northern and western areas. So do look at that in detail now on the latest UKV. If we do just zoom in, you can see that rain clearing away this morning in the far southeast, very soggy overnight and lingering into the morning for the far east, and then as we headed through the rest of today, clearer skies developing, and look at that, lots of sunshine at the end of the evening. I said proper spring-like evening, and yeah, a few showers around, but nothing too bad. Won't last too long as we head into Sunday. Rain will start to push in from the west, so a brief respite there. Brief spring-like sunshine for about 12 hours, and then the rain starts to move back in. Heavy rain for many western areas and northern areas there into Sunday morning. Perhaps some school features. You can see those lines of reds and oranges. Could be pretty severe as they do move in. And then further southwards and eastwards, the rain does take its time to move in, but it eventually clears through into the evening. Could be a very soggy Sunday night into Monday morning there. Eventually all clearing through around sunrise on Monday, lingering lighter rain and drizzle and thicker cloud and a few showers throughout the day. But generally by the afternoon things are clearing, and perhaps similar conditions to what we've had through Saturday afternoon today, with lots of sunshine, maybe a few more showers around, but a lot more spring-like sunshine out there. It will feel a bit colder though. There is a bit of a colder polar maritime air moving in. This chillier air that could dig in from the northwest on the backside of these lows, so it probably won't be as mild, but still will be fairly pleasant. As we head into Tuesday, it's another day of sunshine and showers. Again, perhaps some winteriness within these. Starting to see those sort of spring-like showers. We generally see them, call them April showers. They occur mostly in April. We get cold upper air temperatures with the warming ground. We do get this quite large temperature contrast. Produces quite significant convection there. So similar process here, but it's a bit early in the season to see anything too hefty. But the same sort of northwesterly wind producing those hefty showers. Into Wednesday here, another spell of potentially heavier rain here into the far southwest, into Wales, southwest England and southern parts of the Republic of Ireland, especially through the morning. Then it moves further northwards and yeah, could give a very soggy Wednesday evening into Thursday. You can keep a close eye on that, as the track of that system could really change quite drastically at the day 5 time frame. You can see for southern areas just a bit of cloud, and to the north a bit of sunshine as through the afternoon. So yeah, will be very different conditions depending on the northerly or southerly track of this system. Now do look at the wind gusts. As I said, there is a large wind warning issued for tomorrow, but we're not expecting anything too major. You can see this widely 50 to 60, up towards 70, maybe 75 out to sea, and those winds will weaken throughout the afternoon. But you can see it is just a generally very blustery day, stormy in places, but we're not seeing those pinks and purples, 70, 80, 90 miles per hour that we tend to see with our named storms. So nowhere near sort of the chance of this being named in sort of a short time frame. It's not one of these touch and go systems. As I said, most areas here not seeing much above 50 to 60, a few 70s, and as I said, maybe mid 70s out to sea and maybe over the highest ground. Those winds should die down through the evening, and then you can see as we head through the early part of next week, blustery at times, but not expecting anything too major. Do look at the upper air temperatures. You can see it is fairly mild through today, but colder air masses are nudging in from the northwest, and you can see generally as we do progress into Sunday, another milder sector moves through. As I said, could be pretty mild Sunday into Monday perhaps, but then fresher polar maritime air moves through. You can see that from those -5 dotted around, so it's cold air, but it's travelled a long way over the North Atlantic, so it is highly moderated at the surface, eventually clearing, remaining pretty chilly in the north, but further southwards some milder sectors moving through. Now, if you look at the temperatures, you can see through this afternoon, temperatures widely up towards the 13-14 degree mark, even though the upper air temperatures haven't actually been all too mild today, just with the clearer skies and the sunshine has allowed those temperatures to rise. And ground conditions are generally quite warm over the past few days, with a lot of mild weather around as well. Into Sunday, it's another fairly mild day. Temperatures not quite as high, but 9 to 11 degrees, maybe a 12 or 13 across the Republic of Ireland. And then into Monday, similar conditions, 10 to 12. So actually, Monday evening could be pretty pleasant. It looks like that polar maritime air does take its time to move in. So yeah, Monday afternoon, once all that rain clears, could actually be really quite pleasant. Into Tuesday, though, you see the colder air does finally arrive. Bit of frost in the north and generally mid-single digits further southwards. And then into the afternoon, temperatures more around that 4 to 10 degree mark. And then Wednesday, more of a widespread frost through the morning. And by the afternoon, again, struggling around the mid to high single digits, especially further north as it'll be much, much colder. And then into Thursday morning, you start to see a bit of a battleground going on with milder air in the south, colder air in the north. And yeah, again, all depending on the positioning of that low and that rain that moves through Wednesday into Thursday. That will decide where that cold and mild boundary will be. The risk of some snow is there, but at the moment, not seeing anything too major. And of course, that air to our north isn't very cold. And if we do look at the dew points, there are pretty cold dew points there. But as I said, it is a polar maritime air mass, so it's always quite a bit more marginal. So not expecting snow at this stage, but the possibility is there if we see milder air mixing with these slightly colder air masses that are flirting with us into next week. Now, if you look at the longer range now, if we start on the latest GFS, you can see the west to southwesterly winds continue over the coming hours with that very strong low pressure system. You can see it's centred though towards Iceland, and that's why this is not being named. The main severe winds with this are remaining out to sea and to our north and west, but we are still in the periphery of the system, seeing all the heavy rain and some of the stronger winds. And then into next week, we see this west to northwesterly wind, polar maritime air moving in, and you see these cold air masses do flood in at times, and that's why there is the risk of a bit of winteriness, as I said, if some of this cold air mixes in. But it is travelling such a long way that it does, as I said, lose a lot of its intensity as it does clear through. Into late next week, we start to see those westerly winds continuing. The jet stream actually shifts slightly further northwards. We thought it could shift further southwards into early March. But this latest GFS has it slightly further northwards, and that could be because there's a bit more of a high pressure signal here from this latest GFS. The 6 o'clock run did have the jet stream shifting southwards, so there is still a bit of uncertainty there. But this latest GFS does have some amplification in the jet stream, and later on in its run does build in some higher pressure and does push a bit of a easterly wind in. Now, it's the time of year where an easterly can be cold and it can actually be very mild. So there is a cold pool here initially, and you can see it's actually very cold for the time being, but eventually we actually wrap around to more of a southeasterly, and look at this across the near continent getting up towards 20 degrees. So into early March, if the conditions are right, we could get up to similar temperatures as well. As I said, the west is still trapped in this cold pool, but if we did drag in these upper air temperatures around that 8 to 10 degree mark, then yeah, we could be seeing those mid to high teens or even an isolated 20 degree as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. The high pressure into early March can still be cold. It can be very cold, as we saw in the Beast from these back in 2018 with those bitterly cold easterly winds. And even later on in March 2018, we saw bitterly cold easterly winds into mid to late March. But we can also get a more southerly orientated high pressure system with this a southeasterly with the air coming up from the Med, then it could be actually pretty mild. We're at that time of year we can see both conflicting conditions, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, interesting from the GFS here. If you have a look at the latest GM, this has definitely been sort of the first model that produced more of a high pressure signal. GFS showing that this afternoon, and you can see again west and northwesterly winds over the coming days, keeping it fairly unsettled. And then we start to see that amplification as soon as next weekend. High pressure tries to reach towards Scandinavia and has a go, and actually pushing in easterly winds, and actually has a little bit of success. And we actually do start to drag in some cold air from the near continent. Now, of course, as we progress into March, that cold air does start to run out across Europe. We are on the warming trend now. Of course, winter peaks late December through to kind of early February. We are now on that warming trend, and we are going to see pretty rapid warmth until the peak through June and July in terms of those upper air temperatures. So we are on that upwards trend now. So the continent is still cold and still possible to see cold easterlies, even without a very cold upper air temperatures. But as I said, it is running out. You see here, midday on Tuesday the 4th, temperatures mid to low single digits with that easterly flow. So very interesting to see. And you can see because the tilt is more of a flat easterly or northeasterly, there's no warm air getting dragged up from the Med. And that makes a whole difference. Very similar synoptic pattern with high pressure near or close by, but it's slightly further northwards. and pulling in slightly more of an east to northeasterly wind. Air, if you follow these isobars back, originating more from eastern and northeastern Europe. So again, we'll have to keep a close eye on that. But interesting run here from the GM, perhaps bringing something slightly colder in there for the start of March. Now, if we finally compare it to the latest ECMWF, broadly very similar over the next sort of few days, next week or so, with those west to northwesterly wind. Low pressure continue piling in off the Atlantic. A bit of a high pressure signal there, but we do see the jet stream shifting southwards, and we see a big storm system moving in. Very strong tropospheric polar vortex. Lobe there sat to our north. This big lobe of blue and purple. That is the tropospheric polar vortex. You see it is very much centred towards the North Atlantic here, with little towards Asia or even North America. And that means that there is a lot of cold air nearby. You can see this across Greenland and northern Canada, but it also fuels these lows, and it means that Europe could go very unsettled. And we can see this here with these big storm systems moving in from the northwest. And then you can see a classic cold northeasterly with dragging in from Greenland, very cold air, but it takes such a long sea track. It is a bit deceiving sometimes, these charts, these flat charts. Again, it doesn't take into the fact that this is actually a much longer track because of the curvature of the Earth. It means that this air does get highly moderated. This sort of pattern in early mid-January could produce snow. We saw a similar pattern, I think it was in 2019. We saw a very similar synoptic pattern to this, and we did actually see some heavy snow associated with this in the south. But we are into early March now, so less and less likely. Still cold, April shower-like pattern could occur with this, but yeah, be interesting to see what this would develop from the ECMWF. The temperatures at the surface, as I said, wouldn't be mild, but they wouldn't be they wouldn't be very cold, but they wouldn't be mild either. Look at that, 5 or 6 degrees coming in on that northwesterly wind once this milder air does shift away. So quite a big difference there at longer range from the ECMWF. The GM and the GFS both trying to build in high pressure, whereas the ECMWF goes full-blown northwesterlies with a very strong tropospheric polar vortex across the North Atlantic. And after you finish by looking at the latest ensembles, the latest GFS are just coming out to about day 11. So to be honest, we won't have a look at the 6 o'clock run because we are out to day 11 here, which is kind of the more reliable time frame. You can generally see we're above average next couple of days, but into early next week, as I said, a cooling trend, temperatures around average or below average for the final 3 or 4 days of February, with pretty moderate precipitation, but of course being further south and eastward to London, it's less than further northwards and westwards, of course, where the low pressure systems are being more impactful. You can see, though, into early March, there is still a moderate precipitation signal, so no overwhelming signal for higher pressure, but you see the upper air temperatures do start to climb slightly, so we have to keep a close eye on that. Temperatures dip into early next week, back into the mid to high single digits, and kind of stay there, perhaps slight upwards trend into early March. Again, another one to keep a very close eye on. The big takeaway, or the big giveaway, sorry, from the air mass direction, the dew points. So you can see over the next 2 or 3 days, dew points are between 5 and 10 degrees. Atlantic driven, as I said, milder dew points, more moisture, heavy rain, most likely coming from the Atlantic. But dew points lower, down towards freezing or a couple of degrees above freezing. So more of a typical polar maritime air mass coming in from the northwest or north. But you see longer range, those dew points don't actually rise all too much, which indicates to me that definitely quite a few ensemble members here are not peddling those westerlies back in and are trying to build on some high pressure. So it does see like there is a lot of conflicting signals here. There are still pretty cold dew points, but there's not zero precipitation, still quite a bit of precipitation, which tells me there's a lot of, as I said, conflicting signals. Some colder but wetter runs, some perhaps drier, chillier runs, some milder and wetter runs, all coming together to give this not particularly clear signal. And we saw that from the operational runs, GFS, GM and ECMWF all disagreeing in the longer range. GEM and GFS being similar, but still disagreeing with the air mass direction, of course, with that GFS trying to pull in a very mild southeasterly, whereas the GM was a colder east to northeasterly, and ECMWF a flat westerly. So yeah, a lot of uncertainty. At the moment, though, the different outcomes are not distinguishing between sort of major disruption. Of course, if one was showing bitterly cold northerlies or northeasterlies, then there'll be some more issues here as we potentially be looking at disruption, lots of weather warnings, etc. But we're kind of distinguishing between typical patterns for early spring, perhaps some early spring warmth, perhaps some early spring coolness coming in off the in off the near continent, or perhaps continuing the mild westerly theme. So we'll have to keep a very close eye on it, but for the time being, got to get through the next few days. A lot of weather warnings around for Sunday, so do stay safe out there. Not expecting major disruption, but as I said, it could still be pretty wild out there at times and could catch you off guard. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll continue to keep you updated on this over the next few days. But fingers crossed, we do see something more spring-like into early March. I'm definitely in the mood now where I don't really mind to not see much more in the way of wintry conditions. I do love a bit of snow. You'll probably tell that from the videos. But I'm at the point now where, yeah, wouldn't mind to see some warmth, temperatures back into the high teens or even low 20s. I know it's a bit optimistic for late Feb, early March, but definitely late March into April, that does become a bit more realistic. So yeah, fingers crossed we see something like that. That's definitely what I would like to see. But yeah, we'll have to keep a close eye on it over the coming days and weeks. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.